of people thinking it won't happen. Well, yeah, it is pretty serious, but, well, I don't know what to do about it anyway, and so how am I supposed to really deal with this, please? And I think that's the challenge. So, again, working with this. The last concept that you see up there, personal responsibility, we didn't look at this. This just jumped out at us. I ran some focus groups early on. I had some people come in and I talked to them about, well, I didn't actually talk, I had a student talking to them. People as a whole do not believe it is their responsibility to protect their computer. Certainly not the internet. If you ask most of them, they'll say, it's my ISP's responsibility. It's Microsoft's responsibility. Why do you want me to do this? Which is actually somewhat consistent with the other findings, but it's still somewhat surprising that you can use this concept of personal responsibility in any aspect of human life. Why would you not think this is not your responsibility? But I guess we don't know what to do with that yet. But certainly we know it is the most... Personal responsibility is a major predictor of whether or not people do these things. In data we collected and analyzed last week, we found that we asked people who was responsible, themselves or ISPs, Microsoft, whatever. We also asked them about incidents of things that happened that are, a reflection or an indication that they have spyware, or there's something's wrong with the computer. How often have you been redirected to another website unexpectedly? Has your computer slowed down in performance? We found that people who said that their ISPs are responsible also had a higher incidence of these problems. So that's really strong evidence that if you can convince people to feel responsible and teach them to be responsible, they will be. And I think that's very confirming that if we can get there. And I think that's the challenge, as I said earlier. How do we get there? Aware of the time. I'll be done in 2 minutes. Okay, so I'll move more quickly. So targeted change. This is what we're doing now. We're working on a series of experiments where we are profiling our people with our secret sauce and saying, okay, where do you fit? And we're creating different educational modules that are actually using different appeals. So should we laugh about it? And I don't think humor will work, but humor is one of those things that people in advertising and in health communication use to try and distract people from something called fear. When you talk about this subject and you look at everything in health promotion, fear appeals is what everybody uses to get behavior changed. You better not do that. You're going to die. You better not do that. Your computer's going to crash. And it always backfires. Always. Fear appeals don't work. And that's the challenge. What do we do? Because we're talking about problems. We're talking about bad outcomes. So we're working on what are the different appeals. Trying to prioritize who's most likely to change. Should we work with them first? Who are the hardest people? Should we leave them alone? Marketers and advertisers leave alone the people who are hard to change. They say, you're worthless. I can't make any money on you. And maybe we can't either. But we might be able to identify people who are more likely to change. And also, a quick one here, I think if we get to them really early when they're young, we have a much better chance of making them more responsible by the time they're adults. Trying to change adult behaviors, much harder than trying to change or create. You're not changing, you're creating habits in young kids. Sorry it took so long. I didn't realize how late it was getting. Questions? I think that's it. There. Oh, pardon me, one more. These are papers. 6 of these papers are in the bottleneck. They're in press. And I know that at least Professor Bertino is interested in some, and I'll get them to you. We have one of them should be coming out in communications of the ACM very soon, and it explains all these variables that I'm talking about, and it has our model. And one of them was published last year, but all of these papers that talk about what I spoke about today will be coming out very soon. And you can contact me. Yes, question?
I was just curious. You said that personal responsibility was a big issue. And would that be kind of the result of the lack of knowledge and a lack of self-confidence that perhaps they couldn't control it even if it was their responsibility?
It's a wonderful question. I don't have the answer. It's something we wonder. Are they a function of each other? Here's what I think, and I'm going to speculate, which is that I think that each of us develops our own sense of personal responsibility about the world in general that comes from another place. Maybe it comes from parents, it comes from religion, whatever it is that you have that tells you about what your job is as a human being. When it comes to these difficult issues, then I think there's going to be some effect of the variables that we've talked about. We don't know. We have to test that. And so I always hate going out on a limb unless I'm really confident about what I'm saying. I think sometimes things are what we call reciprocal. There's reciprocal interactions. In other words, well, I have this level of personal responsibility, which will lead me to feel this confident, but then this level of confidence may come back and hit my personal responsibility. So I think they probably influence each other. If you could probably just grab one of them and try to tweak it, maybe the rest would change too. I don't know. I want to find out. Yes?
How do you see the, I guess I would argue that in the future that our sense of privacy is kind of diminishing when you see all the news sites like Facebook and stuff like that. Do you think the future generations are going to be as concerned as privacy as we are right now?
That's a great question. I really like that question. I recently got some data asking some high school students about their perceptions of the private or public nature of their postings in MySpace and in blogs. And 35 to 40% of them said that they thought what they posted was probably public information, but 60% didn't say that. And when asked if they thought it would be a violation for someone to go in and capture that information, use it for another reason, even the ones who knew it was public moved over and said, no, that's a violation of my privacy. I think that culture changes, the world changes, and it would be natural for this to also evolve so that people get used to the fact that their information is out there. You absolutely have no privacy. On the other hand, I happen to believe that a healthy dose of privacy is a nice thing, and that I'd like to continue to sort of fight the fight a little bit. I'm not saying that we really should make privacy the be-all and end-all, but I think that as a culture, we've always valued that. It will change. It will change. You know, the Constitution, there's a debate, the Constitution gives you a right to privacy or if it doesn't. And technically, people say it doesn't. It maybe give you a right not to house the Tories when they come by with their guns. But does it really give you a right to your informational privacy? No, nobody seems to think it does. If you ask, I think maybe, it was a while back now, maybe 8 years ago, Harris said to people, so, if we had to write it into the Constitution today, do you think we should put in the right to privacy? And 85% said, yeah. So I think it's still an American value. Someone asked me this afternoon, what do you think about cultural differences? I think there are probably going to be very big cultural differences. For example, Asian culture is very collectivist, and American culture is very individualist focused. Is it possible? I think it would be interesting if collectivist cultures had less of a sense of that, but I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility. So I guess I didn't really answer your question, but it's a really good one and needs much discussion. Yes?
Have you ever looked at the level of perceived anonymity by the people? If so, how was that measured, or how did you vary it? And the second question is, did you find anything that indicated if the level of technical knowledge or maybe computer efficacy affected the level of motivation that those people that people usually have?
I can answer the second one quicker than the first one because I forgot the first one already. I'm 50 years old, the mind goes. The efficacy, we have not done what would be called structural equation modeling of those constructs. We know they're related. What we don't know is the path, the sequence of effects, and we are working on that right now. So you said, does efficacy influence the motivation, or does motivation influence the efficacy? That is a paper I am trying to sort through as we speak, that I'm trying to write for a particular call, a journal call, because it has to do with privacy concern, which would be the motivation. So are you concerned because you're concerned, or are you concerned because you can do something about it? Do you feel you can do something about it that allows you to feel you're concerned? Don't have an answer, I'm sorry. But it's an essential question that we're working on. And what was your first one again? Something about how do I measure anonymity?
Yeah, perceived anonymity more than anything.
I haven't measured that yet. I think that's a whole